I'm going to leave it on all the time this way. I'll tap really good.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the 21-25 Planning and Resiliency and Restoration Committee for Port Richey. If we could stand and pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we could do the attendance.
Yes. Chairman Carl Roth,
Present.
Vice Chairman Chris Leeds,
Present.
Member Darrell Rose,
Present.
Member Linda Rodriguez,
Present.
Member Ron Padova. Let the record show that Member Ron Padova is absent from tonight's meeting. And Member Devin Aaron. Let the record show that Member Devin Aaron is present for tonight's meeting.
Okay.
For the world.
Cool.
There's everybody else there.
Good, good.
That's everybody except for Ron.
Okay. So we have minutes on this that we have to approve, like a board meeting?
Yeah, just like your Port Authority board, minutes will be taken and put on the agendas, future agendas for approval from. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, any, like approval on the minutes or any comments about the minutes before we approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay, minutes are approved. I think what we wanted to do is just go through and get any updates from folks first. Put a couple items on the agenda, kind of an extension of what our conversation was last time about stormwater, which I thought was pretty fruitful.
Mhm.
Basically, Daryl had also sent some elevation information. I didn't really put that on, but we could talk about that too, depending on. Incorporated the coastal element of the comp plan in for those that may not have seen that for more contextual background on things. So I thought that might be helpful.
Anybody comes in, just in case.
Okay.
I'll leave that there for you, and then I'm going to grab the mouse.
Good deal. With that, why don't we go around the horn and do updates? Chris, would you like to start?
Sure. So had a back and forth interactions with Mark Bellis, the chief, the director for the Office of Strategy and Sustainability for Pasco County. As we've talked about last couple of meetings, want to have a back and forth with them, really understand their resiliency plan and what their plans are, and look for areas where we can work with them, maybe shovel ready stuff. I hate that term, but it's the most probably accurate one. What are things that they have on their big picture thing that we can take and maybe get them to help us resource and us go do the work? So he's very much in favor of that. Gave me 3 dates in January. So it's the 6th, 9th, and 10th, I think, were the 3 dates. And he gave us pretty much a broad block of time. Each one of those days, it's a Monday, Thursday, and a Friday. I'm not sure how many people we can take with us. I would be bold, and if you say, hey, I really want to go, then I'll ask for a room big enough to hold all of us, or just a few of us, and I'm going to extend an invitation to Matt as well. But the intent of that really is for them to go present their plan to us, and give us kind of an under the covers look. They have not shared it out in the open yet, so we'll be one of the first groups to see that live, and then start a back and forth conversation with them about what we can do to support that plan, and to see if we can get some scientific resources from their team to maybe help out or help flesh out our committee as well. Because I know that was one of the things we really wanted to have. So he's very supportive of that approach. Just look at your calendars, the 6th, 9th, and 10th. And if it's pretty much any time before about noon on all three of those days.
So they're all mornings?
Yeah, all mornings. I think on the Monday it goes up till about 3 o'clock, but that would be starting at noon, 1 o'clock. It's a 2-hour meeting. It's the 6th, 9th, and the 10th. It's a Monday. January.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
6th, 9th, and 10th. So that's good that that's moving forward and that he's engaged there. Had a conversation with Sean Poole from Planning and Zoning. I think we talked about 2 meetings ago that there's going to be some overlap with what work that they do. I just offered to him to have him come to our meeting, first meeting in January,
Okay.
So that he could get a feel for what we're talking about. We're not to a point where obviously any recommendations back to him yet, but don't want this to be happening and us to be moving forward and then get far enough down the road that we need him to do something that's all a surprise to him. Mm-hmm. So he's very open to that and said, "You just tell me when, and I'll be there." So, and I think that was my 2 tasks from last time.
The meetings, does anybody have any biases on early in the week or later in the week?
I would prefer earlier in the week.
Well, that would be Monday.
That'd be Monday.
So that'd be
Only because the 10th I do have a previous
engagement.
yes.
Let's just push for Monday, and I'll do it.
Yeah, because it's a couple of days. The first is the middle of the week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Wednesday.
there's a couple of days at the end there if we come back. And what were the time windows on the Monday?
Monday was prior to 9 or prior to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so pretty much any time. So,
Okay. Daryl, what's your take as far as what's going to be less of an impact on you since you're gainfully?
Earlier in the week would be fine.
Time-wise, time in the day, you want to do first thing?
It's hard to say.
Or
Like, I
given
can
the
schedule
weekend, you
it
want to
and
slip it back a little bit, give you a couple hours?
it's all, anytime, as if I accept it, things can pop up with utilities and sewer and stuff like that, but I can usually make them.
You want to, how about a 9 to 12, some of that
Yeah,
window?
fine.
I'll see what I can make work for that day.
Are we
Yeah,
doing that on the
perfect.
9th or the 6th?
6.
6th.
Okay, that'd be better.
I will follow up from all the follow up from all those dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to do that before the meeting. So let's just get with Ashley and
Right.
as far as that goes, and then she can put the word out that we have that meeting
I
scheduled.
assume it's at the government center.
Hmm?
Government center?
I would assume so. Yeah.
So the only thing that we'll have to consider is that we will be attending their meeting. All right, so just from keeping everything on the straight and narrow, we have to minimize our discussion amongst ourselves, but as much as we can go and get out of them and where they're going, it's an open season, so just keep that in mind on that. Cool. No, that's good with Sean because that leads into some stuff that that I was thinking about.
Yep.
Okay.
He was very enthusiastic, happy to get engaged.
Good. Devin,
So I did a lot of research on that gray water thing, and that was very interesting. I don't think it's something that we actually have a water source here that's fairly accessible. Because we have the limestone shelf underneath us and a huge aquifer. But in places where there's seriously water restrictions, like a desert, every drop really does matter. But the systems in place to do that really cost between $5,000 and $10,000 to really set that up, and I don't think it's cost prohibitive. And I think that if we get into that, it will just add a whole layer of more things that people need to add on to their home. And it's a very tricky system that requires a lot of maintenance, and it's a smelly system, and they've come a long way with it, for sure. But like the gray water, if it stays around for any length of time, it reeks. And the filters need to be changed and things like that. And then you have pumps and holding tanks and a lot of plumbing and things like that. And it's a complicated system, is really what it is. It does make sense if you don't have access to water, like in general. But we have the aquifer here. We're very fortunate for that. And even if we didn't have the aquifer, I think that as technology progresses, I think that these are sort of intermediate solutions to, long-term issues and whatnot, like doing this gray water. But I think that technology really will change in 10, 20, 30 years from now, where we're trying to mitigate on a high level these impacts and stuff with the water. But I think we'll have desalination plants and things like that will start to spin up and come online. Because I thought that was an interesting thing that you brought up with the gray water. So I really did a lot of research on it, and I most of the people who had information on it said just don't do it. It's just a big headache.
Well, question.
Sure.
My recollection was the codes precluded us from doing that. Is that correct?
As far as our written codes,
Yes.
keep us from doing that, is what you're saying.
Question. That's the question.
I don't know.
I wasn't
I
so
don't know that.
concerned about,
Sure.
from my perspective, I'm not big into telling you what to do. What I want to be able to do is have the flexibility to do if I choose to do that. So what my recollection was the last time I looked a while ago was that we were precluded from doing that per the codes.
As far as I'm aware, you do have to hook up to sewer. You don't have a choice.
Correct.
But that's not even what he was quite
But
saying.
no, that the sewer part I understand
Yeah.
because that's a requirement, but
Is
not,
it because of
does
the floodplain?
everything have to go down the sewer?
Okay.
Okay, is a question because hooking up to sewer is one thing, black water and gray.
Mhm.
But my thing is there something in the code that's precluding me from doing something that is reasonable and feasible? Not that I necessarily want to do it, but I don't want to preclude you or anybody else from doing if it's a reasonable option.
Commercial is different than residential. Residential, everything, if it's toilet, shower, sink, has to go into the sewer system because with the charge.
Right.
That's how they do it. Drains, it's mainly roof drains, and that's why we do smoke testing. So a lot of people will sneak their roof drains and French drains and tie them into our sewer system. So when we smoke test,
Right.
instead of coming out of the stack of the house, it'll start coming out of the gutters. That's how you know their gutters are tied into our sewer system,
Right.
which is the big no
Big
through the
mystery.
state.
Yeah.
That's a state thing. They cannot be tied in.
I agree that, traditionally the system has built up because of how we've built the system.
Right.
So, like in many of our older cities, the stormwater and sanitary are all tied together. That's creating bigger headaches, but it's been that way for 100 years.
Correct.
All right. So many entities are trying to correct that. My question is, are there things out there today? Okay. We're looking 100 years down the pike. Okay. I'll give you a classic example that I just ran into. My understanding now with the new air conditioning systems that the building code still requires you to have a supplemental heat in it, okay? Because the code hasn't changed. The new systems operate down to minus 20 degrees without need for heat. So why does the code still mandate it?
He's talking about an actual coil system.
Yeah.
Talking about HVAC system, heat pump that you would buy after January 1.
Yeah.
The codes aren't in line
Right.
with the technology.
Right.
So my take, as I step back, all right, and I do a look across the board and say, what are those things that were precluded back because the way we've built the system?
Mhm.
Now, I don't want to go after every windmill out there, but are there some reasonable ones that we should at least ask the question?
But with the gray water, what do you want to do? If you were able, is the premise that if you were able
I don't want to do that.
and use the water to water your grass or fill your swimming
Or
pool,
it'd be more like a reuse. It'd be more like a reuse tank.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I tell you where it came up for
Then
me.
You'll probably have to you probably have to pull electrical permits because you're gonna need a pump.
Yep.
In order to pump it back into your house, you're gonna need backflow prevention devices. because your pump that you're putting in your tank to pump it back into your house to reuse it might come back into our system. If you're putting out more pressure
Right.
than what we're giving you, say you're putting 85 psi and we're only giving you 70, well, you're going to overpower us if you don't have a backflow in, and then they're going to end up, or if the backflow fails, and then you're going to be pumping back into our system, which backs up
And this is
back pressure.
a little bit of a bias for me. So there were some developers that had come in, they wanted to do some larger commercial development and residential development. And one of the questions that came up had to do with the impact on limited resources, water, sewer, and all of that. And because elsewhere in the country, people are trying to satisfy LEED's requirements and whatnot, they're doing some very innovative stuff where they've figured out, and may not be in the books now, but they figured that out. There are other implications, okay, that have to be considered on a larger scale, all right? But are there things that we just want to stop precluding from being able to do because these folks came in and say, hey, I want to do this grand development, and you know what? The impact is going to be no more than 3 houses, okay? Well, gosh, that sounds pretty good because your footprint is a lot smaller than I was thinking.
You're talking about for new construction, or is this like a project that you're interested in kind of doing?
No,
yourself, or-
It's just something
Yeah.
there in my mind that has a lower impact on the environment,
Yes.
okay? It causes downstream ramifications to some of the stuff that we've built up for 100 years. I understand. But the last I looked, we were precluded from doing that. And I hate being precluded from doing things for arbitrary reasons, okay? If it doesn't make sense, okay? So if you wanted to build a new home and put in parallel plumbing systems, all right, for the drain, connected them together today for the sewer system that we go down, okay? Why should I not be able to do that? Because tomorrow, maybe there's a solution in 5 years that makes this a wonderful thing, okay? Because there's been more development, more water demands, and all of that. And poor Richie could say, hey, we've been driving our usage down, okay? Don't hold us back because we've done things in the past because we've looked out forward to say, hey, this is what we want. We need to continue to refresh and redo. And how do we do it in the least impactful way
Being
possible?
proactive instead of reactive.
That's my thinking. So looking at development across the board, how can I do the least impactful development or redevelopment? What are those things that are important? And utilities. So if I encourage people to not use all the power that they do and use energy efficient stuff, that's a good thing, I think, because there's less impact on that. Maybe I encourage them to get solar or wind or whatever it happens to be. I don't want to mandate something because if you don't want to do that, I don't care. But if you want to do that, hey, go for it. So that's my take. I don't want to preclude you from doing something if you want to do it and it makes sense.
So the way it's written currently, the code is you're saying we're precluded from.
I believe that was
Okay,
my.
So I have to. Okay.
So when they put, I use this like they put rain barrels out. They put rain barrels out so they can water the use. So they don't have to irrigate. They can use the rain barrels. That's how they water the plants. It's essentially what you're saying, but there's no reuse inside the house. You can reuse it for outside, however you want to reuse it.
Right.
So the reason we don't allow hookups with gutters and anything other than fixtures inside the house, because you're charged for the water that comes in, sewer. Also, our lift stations are only for the capacity of the residents of the usage that they get, which I think it's average 90 gallons per person per day or something like that. It's roughly an average of 4 or whatever. Also, we have to pay for that. So we're not collecting the money from you guys using the water, but we're paying to have the unused water treated, i.e., the drains, French drains, whatever it may be. That's why you have to do the smoke testing, because there's people out there that's where it's no different than I when we get in our sewer system. If we allow water that's just not being paid for use in our system, and it's just a bad thing all around.
And I understand there's the sewer part is huge.
Right.
I understand that because I know folks that are in the business, and if they don't have the proper mix of black water and gray water, the systems don't work. Okay? But that's why if we wanted to evolve those systems over 20 or 40 years, because of things that we want to do, we need to raise that on the agenda now, because those things don't just happen overnight as far as the source systems. And not that they can't be addressed, but they're not built that way now. So
It's a complicated.
it is.
thing.
It's not a trivial little
I just
exercise.
wonder. Here's my thing with it though. Is like the more I get into it and I think about it, juice is not worth the squeeze.
Okay.
Because it's just a lot of messing around because we luckily have these well fields. They just produce. You know what I mean? We got it's not like we're running out. Like I think that's just a myth. Like that's just a fallacy. Like we're not running out of water. Like I've never in my entire life and in your entire life, we've never turned on the faucet and not had water come out. And they say we're running out of water. I don't believe it. I think that if we do run into issues where the aquifer is kind of coming down or something like that, we'll come up with innovative ideas. But I just think these really complex systems where we have to have these backflow valves, and we're already supposed to have a backflow valve anyways, but is it working properly? Is it gummed up? Is it
Well, let me just stop. My intent was not to pursue the gray water issue.
right?
My intent was to pursue things like that.
Fair.
Okay, that was just the convenient example.
Interesting though.
All right.
It's an
So
interesting thing.
to look for things like that impact resiliency and makes it easier to restore, that minimizes impacts on the environment. Those are things that I think we want to look for. That doesn't fish, I don't care. But let's look for things like that so we can at least think about, because there may be bigger ramifications, because we got a 100-year horizon we're looking at here. I only want to look at 20 and 40 right now. But if we can, what are those things that we need to be thinking about?
So you're not looking at
That specific.
cliff. You're not looking at fixing it for tomorrow or next week or next year. You're trying to get us to look into the far future to set ourselves up
Right.
or
And that's what this
future
meeting is really
generations
about.
Yeah.
up for success in the future.
Yeah.
And you use the gray water as an example,
As a-
but that's one piece of the puzzle. But the puzzle's a 3,000 piece puzzle or
Right.
whatever it is.
Exactly.
Am I?
Yeah.
So you're
Exactly.
just trying to get us to open up.
Because development for us, depending on what sea level rise does, may look completely
Right,
different
yeah.
than what we see today. So that's what I think we need to kind of get in our
I see what you're saying.
heads a little bit. And I was just trying to tweak things.
Yeah. So what a lot of places do is, I'm sure you guys heard them, they use reuse plants. I know like how they get the water back to quality is not the most.
It's questionable.
Yeah. The thing is the sewer gets pumped into the tank, gets pumped, then it goes through all these RO process, chemical process, and gets turned back into drinking water, and then gets pumped right back out to the system.
Right.
So, or they use surface water, which is a big open reservoir, collects all the rainwater. Well,
All
it's
the
just like a well field,
pesticides.
pumps it out, pumps it into the plant, gets treated, and then gets taken out as drinking water. So those are some of kind of what you're down the line in part of that tree.
The other thing is, you talk about 90 gallons per person. Okay, you talk a household of 4. Why aren't we encouraging things for 30 gallons a day? All right? And reduce the overall impact, because then there's less demands. It's easier to recover. We got a smaller water plant that we have to do, or we can handle a lot more growth okay? Or we can sell it to more outside. I mean, I don't care, but it's like, what can we do to, grow the city and get us going in those areas? And recommendations on minimizing our impact are around water or sewer. And I only started this conversation because those to me were the fundamentals that we provide to our community. So let's make sure those are right for 20 or 40 years or 60.
Some of the stuff I see where it's high, just from the billing aspect of it, is there's water restrictions,
Right.
but it's not enforced. If that makes sense.
Right.
So there's homes that use 5,000 gallons every other day just watering their lawn. You
Right.
can see which ones water that. So they're overusing that water there as well. It's just, if things were enforced, then the rate, you would see the usage go down a little bit.
But kind of, and like when you buy a faucet today or whatever, they're built in with these, restrictor valves, these little pressure reducers.
Mhm.
The first thing I do when I buy those is I rip them out because I hate that. I want to use 90 gallons a day. I don't want to use 30 gallons a day because when I take a shower, I want a nice. I live in America. This is a rich country.
Okay.
If we have issues, we need to make more water, not restrict, less. I think it's we have this thing of scarcity in our minds from, like the greenies and things like that. And I understand, and it's thoughtful and it's correct in a certain way, but I don't like scarcity. I like, abundance and kind of moving towards that. Like if we don't really have water issues, currently, and even if we do develop the rest of Port Richey, I'm not even sure if we would even have water issues then, especially if we're making a new plant.
I don't think
It's
I
not
don't
the
think it's
water.
water supply. It's
It's
the moving it through the
Mechanical, it's the
system
mechanical,
capacity.
the wells, the high service pumps,
Right.
the parts back there. When you're
Sure.
using so much water, when your wells are running 24 hours a day with no rest, that's what hopefully the new water plant, it'll pump during the day, leave enough in the water tank, rest during the night. That's what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
Just pump during the day, rest at night. It's only supposed to be irrigation water at night, which is less than what is everybody using from day to day. Now our water's down because obviously there's not that much people in the city right now using it.
Sure.
Right.
So
If you have not toured the water plant, I would suggest you get with Daryl and do that because I did it and it was the two gentlemen that work back there are telling me.
Sam and Ray.
Yeah, I know, but their certifications they are,
So I have a Class C, they have Class A's.
and very few cities have Class A water treatment guys, and they are so knowledgeable. So I would highly suggest you guys go back there and they'll tour you around. They did me, and it was a complete eye opener on what they were improved since they've gotten there, but also they're very knowledgeable in the water aspect of
Take it
it.
to the
And-
well field, where do you want to do it?
Yep, take you to the well fields and stuff. So, great guys.
So
Yeah.
I think these are all good things. It's just a matter of what are those things that we want to push forward or recommend forward. And I think, we're kind of getting a feel for what that is. And that was the intent
Sure.
of that, to look at those things from a permittability perspective. And are there things that we shouldn't preclude that we may preclude now? Or things that we should encourage that we don't encourage? So those are recommendations that we can make to council and to the city.
But what I was sort of, after I kind of looked into that, I kind of, segued there. And I was looking into, because of obviously the flood, it's top of mind, and how we mitigate that for, I'm looking at some new construction, that's happening around the city, and I see these studs, these 2x4s, they're not pressure treated. At least I don't think they're pressure treated. And, it's just a garage. It's on the first floor. But number one, it's too low. I don't know why we even allow garages to be built that low, right? And also, too, why are we using anything but pressure treated lumber for the bottom floor, right? And why aren't we sealing up the studs? And why aren't we mandating that we should be waterproofing everything, that's gonna be destroyed. Basically, what happened to everybody, in the storm. We should be looking to try to waterproof these things, seal up the studs with some kind of seal and epoxy, elastomeric, red guard, whatever. Maybe instead of fiberglass, insulation, maybe closed cell spray foam would probably be a good look. Even like for wind ratings and things like that, instead of using a 2x4, why don't we mandate any kind of outside lumber be a 2x6 instead of 2x4, because it adds so much strength. I'm doing a home right now from 1965, and I'm looking at. I didn't even notice this. It looked kind of funny to me, but the stud size is just different.
It's a real 2x4.
It's a real 2x4,
Well,
and it's hardwood too. It's not this crap we buy at the store.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I kind of move towards this area is that if there's rebuilding going on, what are those recommendations that we should put forward to make things more resilient?
Yes.
Should we consider making recommendations to people that come in to build? Should we be putting things as an enhancement to the building code to make things more stringent? I don't know that answer, but if we get a list of things that we think are important, understand the cost ramifications associated with it, and then is it something that we want to push forward as a recommendation, or do we want to push it forward as a encouragement to revise the code in the city?
But that was kind of my short list in my head, and if we want to maybe discuss that like a little bit, sealing of the studs, instead of drywall, maybe hardy board 500, and 2x6s instead of 2x4s. Also, there's a greater R value there potential, because you can obviously fill the gap, more, with 6 inches instead of 4.
But so just for argument's sake, so for new construction, right, it should be up anyway, right? You shouldn't have new construction on the ground in the water, in the floodplain. So I'm with you. My house is block up to the first floor, right? And so I've got a very small part around the steps from the garage up in the house, from the original house, and it's just 2x4s.
Right.
They're the crappy 2x4s. The house was built in 2004 or whatever. But those aren't damaged every time. They've been wet twice since I've been here, and there's no damage to those, right? They just dry out and they're fine. I wish they were like the ones in his house, and real 2x4s, and treated lumber and all that stuff. But I guess my point is, what we're describing in large part is how people are rebuilding ground floor houses right now, right? Those are the ones that are rebuilding using the cheapest material that they can get, because what they can afford to do. New construction already has those requirements. It's more the rebuilding ones. They can't afford to do a lot of the stuff you're talking about.
For the upper floor, obviously that's high, but what I'm kind of saying is we have these houses, built on block, and that's good.
Right.
But the problem is the ground floor of these homes that are built on block, that are raised up on stilts or whatever you want to call it, they're too low, and we still utilize the bottom floor. So what I'm saying is if we use better materials, and you might have a very simple downstairs. In my house, I have a little more going on, and I have a lot of kind of work I got to do, to fix it, and I'm going to do this on my own stuff, and I think that the cleanup from the storm is probably a sales ship, but I think that we should be looking at elevations of homes in general from the garage floor, from the bottom floor, because we keep our cars there, we keep our Teslas. If we're into that, they can blow up. It's a huge problem. But we should be elevating these properties as much as possible, with drainage in mind, and trying to mitigate some of these things, so we don't have, even if your house is upstairs, your shop or your laundry or your stuff is higher.
Let me just
more
make
resilient.
We're having a great conversation. Are we focusing on the new development are we talking about the existing and what we can do? Or are we talking about both?
I think it could be
Do we have a
both.
bias one way or the other that we can take offline and go work?
I don't think we're gonna ram this through to the council and
I agree.
and get it done. And I don't think we even need to do that right now because this was kind of a 60-year eye opener for us.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
But I think that moving forward, we should try to mitigate this because I'm seeing new construction that's shit, and it's not good, and we need to fix it because
So let's come down with some, okay, if we look at the code, and this is what's required for new construction,
Mhm.
and it's not adequate,
right.
okay? They're not doing it as resilient as it should be.
Sure.
Let's highlight those things and let's get a list and let's have that as our next discussion.
Yeah, and even like the fact that we're talking about elevations of the roads. We're building new homes that are not high enough for what the future is going to look like on the base floor. You know what I mean? Just on the garage.
Yeah, I wish they'd have brought in, about 75 dump trucks worth of fill in my house. I wish my house
Sure.
in 2004 had been built 4 feet higher.
Most
right?
of them
But-
builders are going to throw it on the homeowner to raise it because you get the lot as is. You can go around
Yes.
on the east side of 19 and some of these homes sit in a bowl like that and the driveway
Right.
just comes. It just,
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
and there's no V's in a lot of these If you go around, go outside of here
Mhm.
and just go out there, spring wherever. If you could, the first 10 feet of every driveway where they come together like this, there's a V.
Right.
That's supposed to be, every house is supposed to require that. That's for the water come this, water
Right.
come this, and it goes down the swales like that.
Right.
And I got a house on Damon Lane that has caused kind of a huge flooding issue on my street. We talked to the old building official about it. We had made several comments to the building department about hey, like this is where all the water goes. We have to mitigate this, etc. Can we put in a drain here before the structure goes up, before the foundation's done? And nothing was done. And it's the flooding is like horrendous. And Daryl's been keeping up with this and bringing the sucking truck and
We
Yeah,
have,
doing
we
all
actually
that.
have an engineered quote on doing that road. So
Good. And I
just actually
appreciate
got it a
that.
couple weeks ago.
But that house, for instance, the electrical panel nearly got flooded. That should be way up. And the bottom floor of that house is like right at the grade of the road where it floods. So, naturally it got, 4 feet of water in it. And this is a brand new home that this guy paid almost $700,000 for. And it's like our building department's not, helping people say, okay, we live in a flood zone. We need to bring this thing up, and you need to make adequate drains to be able to mitigate this because this will help the home be more resilient moving forward in the future. And that's kind of, I'm like a practical guy, and I see things in the community, and I'm like, well, that's, we should probably mitigate that and change that. We should elevate this.
Well, if we should come up with something that is something that we can give to the building department of things that people are coming in and looking to develop new
Yes.
or buying in the community. And we have a list of things that you want to consider to help make your place more resilient. Here's a list of things you want to consider. If that's something we want to move forward, I'm okay with that. So let's take that,
Let's work
okay,
on that.
work on that,
Yeah.
okay, and then we can move that forward.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm excited about that. 'Cause
All right.
That's something that's.
I would suggest
helpful.
you all look at the town hall we had last week, which was almost 2 hours with only Chris here.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a
And-
great guy.
and all the building official stuff, because it's not really just the building official, it's a lot of the citizens that are not also complying, and it's
Right.
it's a combination. So, and there's a lot of good information in that discussion, and it was for 2 hours. Chris started out real upset, of course, and understandably so, and by the end of it, it was more of a information give and take back and forth. So it was 2 hours, and we all don't have 2 hours to watch. But I would suggest it was really good info, because a lot of it is not just us, it's FEMA guidelines.
Right.
It's not us being a pain in the neck. It's FEMA, and FEMA does have guidelines for how much you can raise it. And you're not supposed to have the first floor garage and have a playroom, and you're not want to go put a garage door on
No living
their home,
space.
and they were denied because it's not supposed to have a garage door. And that's not a Port Richey rule. You could move to Newport Richey. It's not a Newport Richey rule.
Right.
It's a FEMA rule. So there was a lot of good information. So I would suggest
Sure.
regarding flood. It wasn't everything, but it was at least a good conversation back and forth.
I was given all the things that are going on, and that's kind of a moving target right now.
Yes.
Staying away from that if we could, and trying to take the
Right.
longer term view, because there's a lot of dynamics going on
Yes.
right now, and I thought we didn't need to have that conversation again.
Yes.
So are you good as far as
Yeah.
coming up with?
I'm excited about
Okay.
that. I think that's
Cool.
great. I think
right.
that's great moving forward, really.
I spoke with Michael Faustini. I'm sorry if I screwed that up. Park Ranger at Werner Boyce.
Yep.
I asked him if he would like to come to the meeting. He said he would love to.
Okay.
He doesn't know how much he can do. You might have to run it up the chain.
Sure.
But I told him a little bit. I told him to maybe expect a phone call from you, that you were very knowledgeable and you could
Okay.
talk to him. But he was more than willing to come. I left him 2 messages about tonight. I only spoke to him last week.
Okay.
So I guess he just couldn't make it tonight. But
Okay.
I'll call him. I got his number on my phone, and if you want to give him a holler. But he was very excited about the resilience, because I guess he lives back there. His whole shop is still 4 foot of see-through,
Yeah.
because he of course got inundated back there as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to come work with us and see what we have to do.
Okay. Good. Dear,
I got over I got you. You saw the elevations.
I did
Just
see the
minimal.
elevations.
I can get you any.
So that's
where you
just a
want.
snapshot.
So yeah, well, I had to insert them all in there.
Okay.
So that's the information I got. So you'll see the ones where I put on the house. That's actually the elevation of the house.
Okay.
The
So those
elevation of the
were,
street. You can see our streets were only 3 foot, as in some areas, some 5 feet above sea level.
Right.
And one house, and I gave him Bay Boulevard. I don't know if everybody saw it. One house on Bay Boulevard is a 5.3. Our road is only like a 4.6, and the bottom of the swale is like a 2 something. And then you go down to at Bay and Old Post where that drain comes out right there where I put it.
Yep.
It's at a 0.5.
0.7, I think it was.
Was it 0.7? So it's only it's only half inch above sea level or half foot above sea level.
My cul-de-sac completely fills up with water on harvest tides this time of
So-
year. So, like the island.
After this,
Yeah.
I have the map in my truck that has all the everything from over the years, so we could pinpoint spots if you want to look.
how
at it.
about next meeting? Why don't we do a little bit further look on the whole roads piece of the equation? Because that was really the bottom line. Are there things that we need to do with the roads in the immediate term to buy us a more consistent level? So I'm not, high and then go swimming and then come back up
right.
again. So from the short term, maybe that's a fix.
Those swales, I think on Bay Boulevard are at like a 2 something. It was like a 2.5, if I remember correctly. I have the if I need to look at it. They're only 2.5 feet above sea level, so they're gonna flood.
I got a real good visual of that coming in at 6 in the morning on the morning
Yeah.
after the flood, because there was you could just see where you could go, where you couldn't. It was just real.
And me and Matt are working on some in-house things with engineering firms, Bridging Wilkins down to Old Post to Coons Road, figuring that whole thing out. Damon Lane's one of them. If you guys haven't heard, we just did Blue Point Canal.
You did what?
Blue Point Canal. Cleaned it all up.
So
Up to 60 feet off of Old Post Road, 3 feet down.
Nice.
Oh, is that
I
what's
saw
happening over there? Oh, so Dave's happy about that.
I saw the debris dams.
You saw the
Yellow.
video too?
No,
Yeah.
I saw when
Yeah,
I drove
the
by.
Tribune,
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put those up.
How,
Oh,
how
yeah.
did we get that done, by the way? How was that?
So I had a contractor come in since and use his permits through the state and everything. So we were able to get that
Was
done.
that like a trash pump deal or
We dug it out.
Just dug it out.
dug it out?
Yeah.
from a stormwater standpoint.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
And
That's great.
we cleaned out all 3 30-inch pipes. So
Nice.
A lot of stuff in those pipes.
Not as much as you would think. A lot of it was there was a lot of built up on the east side of Old Post, where it was restricted. And obviously, if you went by the west side of Old Post during low tide, you would know, you would see how high it was. But that's all down, all taken down 3 feet,
Nice.
And that's because that's where the drainage pipe comes
Right.
in.
and it flows through there now. So,
Yeah, we talked
so
about
that's
that.
good now. Yeah, we talked about Blue Point. That was on it. Another spot is Deidre and Limestone through Olsner to Mallet over to Bems Court. So it all flows through that. Up to Pius Street, Sunset Boulevard, and Chapel. Cool. So I got all the quotes. I just got to get done.
Pretty good.
That's what we're working on.
I have not had any success with Newport Richie. I have an alternate course of action that I'm going to pursue in the next piece, but I've I've done my follow-ups and it still lays by the side, and I've got the potential angle that may shake things up a little bit. So it'll either go very well or it will blow up in my face. I'm not sure which is going to be, but so by next time I'm hoping to have some information for you on that note. Comp plan piece. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. You may be more familiar with than everybody else, but you guys may not have seen it. But a couple of things that I highlighted because of our conversation last time around stormwater was in a number of areas, basically that what kind of water and land practices need to be in place to reduce stormwater runoff and enhance percolation. So these are things that are in the comp plan, but what I don't know in the land development code, I don't find anything specific associated with that.
Not tied together.
Right. So I see the desire, but I don't see what you want to do. All right. So if we want to reduce stormwater runoff, what are those things that should be in the land development code? Is my interpretation, unless somebody has some insights about it that I didn't see. So I highlighted that, if they exist or not. Maximize recharge of developed land and ensure protection of wetlands and recharge. So maximize recharge of developed land. So that's assuming that there's something there. So what can we do in that arena? Or the question is, how do we do that? Land development should limit lot coverage and impervious surface. I don't see anything that deals with that, but that's something I've got some information on it in my piece. But that was a vision in the code. There's no way to execute it, so is it something we should bring forward, or maybe we'll work with planning and zoning on that? But that's another question, and I'll bring that up here in a moment. There was a number of things in the code, and I've seen, in the comp plans that talk about like hardwood hammocks and wetlands, category 1, 2, and 3. I'm not sure of any 1 or 2 that are around. Are they because of the size?
Yeah. The only one that'd be probably close to us is Phelps Bay.
Okay.
That's in the States, that's what it was.
So there's things in the comp plan that kind of confusing for me because we do boilerplate and they don't mean anything. So the other thing is an interesting one that I saw that I've considered is the encouragement of planting native vegetation in front of seawalls, which translates to mangroves. I've done a lot of reading on it. I hear good things about it. My question would be, is that what do we do to minimize the critters that come with? Is there something that we can?
Well, and there's also the issue of if you plant like where they just you go plant mangroves, that canal
You can't
doesn't
direct them all.
exist in 4 years.
Right.
Right, they just grow across and cover it
They
up.
create like a mat.
Huh?
They create a mat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There are canals
that
that are too
even
small
at 3
for-
feet,
not
for,
well, with the mangroves, and if they get too big, you have to be a certified arborist.
but even if it's a man-made canal, so we're losing, those freaking things, man. They're like
Prime
Brazilian
example
peppers,
is limestone by the marina. Why that
Right.
doesn't drain is because it takes a while. The mat that's grown over it. So I got with the arborist, and we're going to try and just lift the meshing up on it to let the water flow back through. Because the mangroves they create like a bed of just
They're good for erosion control, but goddamn
Yes.
mighty.
And protecting from storm surge.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like-
They do, but it's a there's actually good things about mangroves, but you almost can't mess with them because there's so much regulation protecting them.
Right.
But
anything over 6 feet. You have to be an arborist.
But the goddamn things grow everywhere. I mean, because of the flood, I got them popping up all over my property in just the most random places. These
Well,
things.
seeds go everywhere.
Yes.
Things, man.
But I know it's from
Correct.
a how you protect seashore. It is the
Very viable
invoke,
alternative.
right? It is
Yes.
it is much
Sure.
more attractive now than bringing in a bunch of rocks or some kind of artificial fill or concrete or
Right.
whatever. Right? It's much more attractive. Just when you said in front of seawalls, oh my gosh, it's,
I'm just reading off the comp plan.
I know.
All right. But
Yeah.
so I think what I look at is the fundamental challenges when I look at our coastline, and I believe the solution isn't one thing for everywhere.
Right.
Okay. But where the solutions are, we ought to encourage is the part that I'm hoping that we can get to. Maybe the conversation with Pasco County will help,
Right.
given that there's some more knowledgeable people. And I know with the state, he talked about a biologist that is available that, those are the kind of people say, okay, that works here. It's really not practical there. So we could at least get some ideas that let's consider that here. Let's not consider that there. And maybe we bake those things into the zoning code. Like, I don't know, but just trying to get some things on it. Let's see. So those are some things that I saw in the comp plan that I thought, applied to us, that if we could figure out how do we make it happen. So what I did was kind of with that context,
You know, we're not reading that as you sit by, right?
well, if you want to read it, I thought
Just letting you know.
that's good. Because now the question is 90%. Quite that small. All right. So, from our conversation last time, I thought putting some ideas on paper might be helpful. Maybe it's something that I wanted. We're really here to make recommendations to City Council. So, but when we're working cooperatively with other parts of the city, like planning and zoning, how do we want to do this? Do we want to get with planning and zoning and try to come up with a solution? Do we want to toss it over the wall to planning and zoning and let them work on stuff? Do we want to take it to City Council cooperatively? So I want you to think about how we should move things forward. What do you think is going to be the most effective way to do that as we go through this conversation? Okay. So I just lay that in for groundwork here. So basically from a planning and zoning standpoint, how we build, the amount of impervious surface was one of the things that I've had a hang up on because I've done some stormwater work in the past at the county level. And what I didn't like is that I allow the developers to come in and do their designs based on 50% hard surface. But then after you buy the house, you can do whatever you darn well please. So in that I've over capacitized the stormwater at that time, nobody cares. All right? Except the guy that's getting flooded next door. All right? And why that's happening, everybody pleads ignorance on. So that's always annoyed me to a degree. So how we build, how do we maximize open space? How do we do things for percolation? That's another area. So what we wanted to do is, better prepare for resiliency and protecting the resources and how to recover faster, which I think is a key thing overall, especially if we're going to get tagged on a regular basis. This is all fairly familiar, I think, with people. Adaptation strategies that we can use, protection, hard and soft, structural, that's our green and gray kind of stuff, accommodation, but how do we basically not have a barrier, kind of what we were talking about earlier, Devin, but how do we encourage things to occur in maybe a different way than they would typically do? I know on the elevating structures piece, there's limited resources to be able to do that. So how do we go about going after that? Do we incentivize people to do things? How do we go about it? The avoidance piece is an interesting one. Where do we say no? Okay, that we don't want you to build down at Harbor Isles anymore because that's going to be underwater. So any new construction there is verboten. Any property that comes available, I don't know. I'm just.
I don't think we should. I don't think we have any of that in our city that we should probably like. I think everything that's platted in our city, we should try to get built. Well, at some point in time, because we have a very limited amount of land.
Correct.
So,
I mean, that's the constraint that we have to deal with. But how we build, maybe that's something that we look at, we encourage. So, I mean, if you go around, at least in my immediate area, you find people that had very little impact, and you had other people that had a whole lot of impact that maybe shouldn't have. All right. And then you have the old guard that, you're toast any way you look at it. So the interesting part of this is, and I alluded to it earlier, is what we propose is kind of a function of what we have. So making it fit is what we have to figure out. Having that blanket statement that applies to the river, the coast, the Audubon area, the bayou, I don't know if that's reasonable or feasible. So how do we get down to that level to say, this makes sense here? It's economically viable. It's technically feasible. So how do we look at that? So what I was looking at here was what kind of regulations could or should be in place. So should there be additional things in the floodplain or floodway? Because floodway has a different meaning than floodplain from the Fed side. So what are those minimum standards that should be in place to help resiliency standpoint? I don't believe we have any zoning overlay areas other than the waterfront. Is that a correct statement?
It's the only one I know.
That's the only one I'm
I
aware of.
think so. Yeah, I think
Okay.
you're right. Yeah.
So the way they talk collectively is that this can be a really useful tool. I don't know how planning and zoning has looked at this in the place, but maybe we look along the river as one, or around the bayou as one, or if there's different things that we come across that are effective, maybe this is something we should consider is coming up with more specific recommendations or whatnot in a particular area. And certainly floodplain management stuff, this is, I think, part of the struggle that we're going through now is we're trying to get points, but then these things aren't effective. But I come back to open space, that was another area. So, where was I going on this? Okay, so things like green roofs. I don't know if you can build a green roof here. All right.
Like grass on there.
I don't know. What the heck?
What is it? What is
You're talking about like green walls too, where they put like a thing of jasmine as the wall instead of building a brick wall. They do it over in like England and stuff a lot.
Right. So this goes back to, are things precluded or not? How do we keep it open? So there's other things. The one I found interesting was the building design. Modular buildings can more easily be moved, renovated, and deconstructed as a community or tenant needs change or as climate-related impacts change. Interesting concept. we preclude mobile homes, manufacturing homes in many of our areas. Are we looking at this wrong? Because we know that those stand up to hurricanes just as well as in the past, but if they're easier to move and relocate or whatnot, maybe in some areas that's what we should encourage being done versus a traditional stick-built home that you can't move without dynamite. So again, this is just to stimulate thought processes on here. When I was down in Cuba, what their comments were, the only building that stands up to a hurricane is a concrete built building. Walls, roof, everything.
Yeah, Puerto
Okay.
Rico's like that too.
So
Puerto
it's
Rico, you
like,
can't build anything without a concrete roof either, yeah.
cool. So, are these things that we should be putting out there? Acquisition of land, I think, is an interesting one. Conservation easements for the stormwater piece. Buyouts of frequently flooded property. I don't know if we've had any conversations about that in the CRA. I didn't think so. So what I did was try to look at it from a standpoint of, for example, so if I look at our residential zoning, front and rear setbacks at 25 feet, side setbacks at 5, 15 total, pool 5 from the water, building coverage, I saw something in there that's translated 35% of the property. But if you look at a house for us in Port Richey, that translates to 2,400 to 2,700 square feet, 400 square feet of driveway and a pool. That gives you coverage of the 52 to 56%, just on the basics. That's not counting sidewalks or big patios or any of that stuff. The county, if you look at their setbacks, 30, 30, 15, 15, much more green space available. And one of the things that I looked at is if you took a look at, we said 1,000 equivalent residential units in the city. If we applied that concept, what the county has versus what we do, we could acquire another 17 to 24 acres of permeable ground for water absorption versus hardscape, right? So my intent was here to at least, what if, okay? But are there things like this?
You're assuming if you leveled everything and built everything back up.
Anything I built new, or if you wanted to add a pool to your place, all right?
Or take one out.
What do we want to do? This is a more complicated area,
Right.
but this is where
I'm just talking about that bottom unit, so 1,923 units. The increase you're talking about would have to be if all of them were built to the county code versus the city code.
I just took 1,000.
Okay.
I said
Well, that's
some
half.
of those are.
That's half.
Yeah,
Okay.
I figure most of those are residential units versus multi units because I didn't have a number and I didn't want to call Matt. So anyway, the concept here was, is there something we could do in the planning and zoning to enhance our ability? I know in the waterfront overlay, there was a big deal about having hard paved areas versus permeable. But over the last 5 years, the big talk on commercial is have permeable so you don't have to deal with the stormwater runoff. Our codes don't allow that.
Don't allow what?
Permeable parking.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, because I remember a conversation when
you could
Seaside,
use turf
a
block.
couple people ago, when Seaside was first being built and those gentlemen were there, they were extending the parking lot towards Gildog's, and the parking lot had to be
Had to be permeable.
It had to be.
had to be permeable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm
there's
maybe
a
back
gentleman,
early started.
yeah, and for residential, on Candlelight, he put a big, one of the big, I call it industrial, a garage for his RV and stuff like that. And I spoke to Mike at the time when it was being built, and he had to maintain 40%.
Something about Jerry,
40%
that big building or whatever.
on Candlelight. Had to maintain the 40% permeable. So and he did that. So
Okay.
and that was enforced. That was just a year or two ago.
Okay,
So there is something in there about that.
okay, so there, maybe it's more flexible, I just didn't know, but I was looking at the setbacks piece, because if somebody's coming in on new property,
Right.
what do we want to do there? Or if I'm rebuilding, I know a couple of houses are being torn down, all right? So do we want to do something, or do we want to make recommendations in this area? So that was the intent there. The other thing that I looked at had to do with the stormwater piece in total. And one of my things is I don't want to reinvent the wheel, because I want to be able to do on something that's relatively acceptable. But for present day design, it's 25 year, 24 hour. And I'm going back to our well discussion, all right, which is, why don't we get with the county and any major development here and say, no. Let's treat it as a closed basin. I want you to hold your water for at least 24 hours, because what Matt talked about, and I think you mentioned, Daryl, last time, was that with Milton and Helene, they were two different events.
Right.
One was water from inland, one was water from the coast. Well, if I have the combination, that's a serious problem.
Right.
So if I can hold things for 24 hours, I still may get screwed. But if I could hold it for 24 hours by upping the capacity in the city, that would be great. But more importantly, what I'd like to do is go to the county and say within 2 miles of the coast, all right, to get more resiliency. And this is a conversation that I'd have with Bellis, because they're doing their stormwater study now. It's like, what are we going to do along this line to protect the coast better for a period of time? We're not talking for 500 years. We're talking up your standard a little bit to buy us something. Okay, so that's where that was coming in.
On this side of town, it's hard for us to hold water because our elevation is so low.
Right.
That if we get a 2 foot, 3 foot tide coming in, that's why you see the water coming in
Sure.
on Maple.
Right.
It's going to be hard to hold water, because when it rains, you see water. It even happens on Limestone, Deidre, Ben's, the water just sits there.
But you're talking about getting the county to hold stormwater, right? So if you had Milton and Helene were the same storm, if the water comes in and we've got the rainwater runoff at the same time, then we would have had way more water than we had, right? We need the water from the new developments out in West Pasco to not come here. At least
For a period of time.
Yeah.
Well, we get a lot of US 19 as well.
Well, that's where our conversation last time with the state of Florida. Hey guys, come up with a solution here to hold your water, all right, for 24 hours, all right, for the 100-year. Changing things up a little bit. I don't want to make it impossible for you.
Yeah.
But what I want you to do is make it more resilient than it is today. And this is an easy thing that we can point to and say, this is what we'd like to do as creating a life preserver around Newport Richey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Port Richey, and probably Newport Richey too. But and I'd go to the watersheds myself, but I didn't want to get there. I just said 2 miles for conversation.
At least from here west, we shouldn't be holding any water there, right? That should just go.
Yeah. It should be able to go out.
Water. We didn't hold any water for Milton. The water was built from Helene.
Lee.
Right.
But I think given how the county's working, all right?
Yeah.
And the general thought is when they do stormwater development is that I'm not an enclosed basin. I'll handle what I traditionally handle, but then if it goes more than that, I'm dumping it to you. So I've got a dumping project through Magnolia Valley and the work that we're doing across 19. You're shipping it our way. Thank you very much. So what I'd like to do is say, guys, hey, let's do something here, figure out how to, you buy some land and figure out how to hold it back for the 100-year, 24-hour event.
Well, they are widening that. They're working on it right now, going to the park, Salt Springs or whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
the stormwater system that it goes through and where it runs through isn't the city of Port Richey area.
Not all of it.
Springer and everything, we don't. That's all Pasco Road. Where AutoZone, that field where it comes through that dam, where that's all Pasco County. Our storm water doesn't go into that at all, which it should. We should be able to, since you are pumping it, pushing it back to us up at Salt Springs. But
Just where I was trying to go was, okay, there's things that we could potentially do, trying to get with planning and zoning, or how do we want to move these kinds of things forward? Are any nuggets like this that we need to package better, update council on, get some more facts to bring to the table? I'm trying to test the waters here. What do you guys think on how do you want to move stuff forward? And is there anything here that we want to move forward, or it's not ready for prime time yet?
we can to hold a lot of this water. You could put bigger storm pipe in instead of the little 2-foot ditch that we have. You know, if you put a 36-inch pipe in, like how it's almost standard everywhere now, you'll hold a good amount of water. It'll be almost outside out of mind. But a lot of PM down the road, the Miami curving, to get rid of these swales where it all just flows into the inlet.
Right.
And it's pretty much on the side of the road, up and down the road. That's what I think we should do on our busier roads.
What if we had, from the drainage canal you just cleaned out, that under Bay Boulevard, we created a drainage capability that's 24 feet wide and 3 feet deep under the full road all the way
That's
out?
what I was talking about with the Miami curving with the P inlets. And then that'll take it and you can take it down to Coons and have it drain down there. Or wherever wherever the best place for us to drain is, wherever the lowest part, wherever the lowest part is for us, that doesn't flow into the canal. Because if you put a bigger pipe in, we're only 5 feet above sea level.
Right.
Well, by the time you get to fall, so obviously the bigger pipe you don't need as much fall as you would with the smaller pipe. The bigger pipe, you can almost run it flat and it'll drain.
Right.
Yeah.
But by the time you put that pipe in, you're almost going to be
Well,
leveled with it.
we
With
know we need to do
fabric.
something with Bay Boulevard.
Right.
Okay, let's get to the elevations, get a little ag, don't want to go there, but just leave this for food for thought, right? But if we had to raise Bay Boulevard and we raised it and elevated it over a drainage system under the road.
Yeah.
Okay, complete, curb to curb. So 24 feet of drainage, 36 inches, 48 inches, I don't care. All right, at that low slope, that's a lot of drainage capacity that can drain stuff out in that funnel out. Okay, so
How would that impact the houses on Bay?
You can't build it higher than down because you'll flood them unless you crown the road.
Well, that's what I was asking. Would we have to go down? Well, you couldn't.
But a lot of those houses pitch to the street anyway. So what the hell?
Some of them are like a foot above the road.
see, this is where we need the elevation conversation, because
Yeah,
If-
that's what
if we get that and say we able to raise the road 12 inches for conversation,
Sure.
does that get us to our 2070 intermediate level or not? Would that road
Probably
still
not.
dry? Okay, or where does it get us?
Sure.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I think that's the question. So if we have some design that we can bring it up, we determine we can only bring it up 12 inches or 6 inches or whatever. Is it worthwhile to do? Okay, or is it better to Band-Aid stuff because we can't do it?
Right.
Or we work something to get those low homes out and up. I don't know.
Right.
It's more,
But if you have drainage under the roads, the risk of flooding those houses, even if you raise the road, goes down, right? They're better off with a raised road, a real drainage system,
than they are today.
With an
With
open drains.
no drainage system, and that just floods. So the raising the road doesn't by itself flood the house. It does if you don't
Do
do what
anything
you're
else.
talking about with drainage
Right.
underneath it, right? You can accomplish the idea of getting the road higher so it's dry,
Right.
but improve the drainage for those at the same time.
I think,
Theoretically,
but I mean, I'm not a stormwater guy,
I'm not even. I'm
But
farther
if I
from
could-
it than you.
and I'm looking at stuff where I can get, wider sidewalks, get rid of the open swales,
Right.
get a better road that's at an elevation that buys me some time.
Yeah.
Okay? And it may be radically different than what we see, and maybe I, figure out a way to.
So the intersection at Bay Boulevard and Old Post is at a 3.6. So
But
it's
what
only
is that,
3
though?
foot.
That manhole that's not in the road, though, is it?
Yeah, it's right now. It's right there. It's only at a 3.6. Yeah, the manhole that's in the road.
That's the one in the road? That didn't make sense to me because the belly
It's
is
pitching.
to the east.
Pitching. It's pitching. The way these manholes are, and everything, the road's actually pitching towards Green Street.
But the water stands to the east of Old Post, and the elevations did not.
No, I'm talking about on Bay Boulevard.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. On Bay Boulevard, to the east of Old Post, is where the belly is.
So the water comes across here, goes down, and flows that way. Just fills the pipe up and flows that way, and flows towards 19.
Right. The elevations,
And all
it
the,
looked higher on Bay Boulevard to the east of Old Post. And that,
oh yeah, you're talking about on Quist and stuff, right? Because Quist is at a 449, which is almost a foot taller than Bay and Old Post.
all I know is when I come in Bay Boulevard and there's heavy rains, I can't go down Bay Boulevard because there's a belly there at Old Post. You close on
the apartments.
in front of the apartments.
Right on
That's
that
closed
side.
off there because you
Right.
can't. There's no egress.
I think where you're talking about, I think, is where the road does this.
It's
And-
the whole road that's covered. It's not the whole.
In front of Pelican Bay or whatever. That
Yeah, the road pitches like this. That's why you see the roads all ate up.
Yeah, no, it pitches that way, but this section right here
Yes.
is what's always closed.
Right.
Now, it hasn't been closed lately, but that I perceive as being the evacuation bottleneck here, because if I had to bug out and I had heavy rains before, that could very well be closed, and I can't send people that way. And the only thing is to come down this way, so that's, to me, a serious evacuation issue, that if we're gonna deal with road things and that height, that minimum height, I think we need to look at. But anyway, we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
All right, because I think we've had enough conversation.
Maybe put them in a importance order, rank them, 1, 2, 3, whatever.
Right. But that's why I was thinking about the elevation. So, there's the stormwater things, there's water quality stuff, there's this, and then maybe we can get into.
So the road pitches like that.
Kind of towards that.
This road pitches like
South
this.
to north.
That's why you see in some of these. That's why you see that
Yeah,
the
those
road
washouts.
pitches that way.
Right.
Same with down here. Where is it at? There's like little cuts in the sidewalk for the water to go over.
Right.
But this is why this road's all ate up,
Right.
because the water.
The water table.
The salt water, and it's just eating this road, this one travel. The other lane, the eastbound lane, is good.
Yeah.
It's the westbound lane that's bad on Bay Boulevard and Old Post.
Right.
Because the water just keeps popping the asphalt. The water gets in between it,
Right.
Well, that goes to another thing is that if,
which I have a mitigation guy coming to look at.
so
to
for the
repay.
city,
Nice.
we shouldn't be spending any government money or state money on things that are going to be damaged by the storm. So what kind of road are we going to put in?
Right.
To me, that's the fundamental question. It's certainly not going to be asphalt because we know what happens to that. So what is it?
Should be concrete.
Should be concrete. Yeah.
What about brick?
No.
Won't the brick pop too?
Yeah.
Brick shifts and moves, whereas concrete, where it's all tied in with rebar and it's elements
So,
thick or however they
Also,
make it.
too, with this, you could, and if you go down Old Post, if you look at Old Post before Vila Bay was built, it was fine. After Vila Bay was built, if you just go back and look at the map, it was
Right.
torn. Because a lot of this is from these trucks, these bigger trucks coming in. They're just tearing, they're coming to the stop signs, they're sliding, and it just takes you out. That's why if you notice on truck routes, what are the intersections? Because the truck just tear it up. And I think a lot of this, along with the water, with this and Old Post, was done because when the Vila Bay got built.
That was a big conversation back then when it was being built, whether how bad the road, the Old Post was.
Well, let's pick this conversation up next time as far as roads peaks. I think we have some homework to do. Any thought after this conversation? How do we, if Sean comes next time, be thinking about, do we want to toss it over? Do we want to refine it further cooperatively with planning and zoning? Do we want to brief council on the current thinking? Just give some thought to that.
Would it be a good idea to also ask the building official that knows the codes to come when Sean comes? Because a lot of times we're saying we don't know the code, we don't know, we don't know the specifics of the code.
Well,
Would that be beneficial or no?
the develop, I would think on the first one, maybe not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then when we get to the development codes, depending on where we want to go on that.
I think it's, as far as your first question, which has been, how do you carry this forward? How do you make a recommendation? And then, like with planning and zoning and then building codes, I think it's important for us to get big picture stuff, ideas, and then figure out what's the best vehicle to carry this forward, right? Because it's going to be different for each one.
Mhm.
And planning and zoning, I think we've got to get that part of it nailed down first and kind of give a perspective of this is kind of generally what we're trying to do,
Mhm.
and then get more specific, and then you can get to building codes down the road, right? That's my thought on it.
Yeah, because that was my thought all along. Any new development, how do we make sure we're putting the right things out for 20, 40 years?
Yeah, they need to capture all the stormwater before it comes to us. All these new developments and commercials and properties, stuff like that.
I think that's huge.
They should have their own DRA sites. They should have their own. Because you go in any of these new subdivisions getting built, some of these DRAs take up a whole street,
Right.
one side of the street. Lately now they're building the DRAs behind houses and just butting up against it because they get more out of it. But
Right.
Right.
So,
if you notice, yeah.
and that was, and I know I've heard rumors of, development here, development there, but what are we insisting on? Are they operating under the current? Is there something that needs to be more stringent? That's where I'm going.
Right.
Let's get something on the books there if we can, because stormwater is huge.
Yes.
Right. Do I have a motion to end the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Good
Yep.
little run there, but thank you, Ashley.
Go home.
Go home.
We'll leave everything here.
Yeah, my builder had to come by and fix something at the house. He and I were having a conversation. We got a house in Tampa where they're doing an addition. And I think it's the city of Tampa has come back to them and said, look, what we're doing, the amount of hard surface you have and the addition, you're going to have to